West Gate Park has been one of my more anticipated anime of the fall 2020 season. And yeah, fall 2020 has a lot of good anime, and a show like this you could easily skip out on, and I almost did. But, you know, when you're going over the charts, you're trying to see what's coming out, you look at something like West Gate Park and you say, oh, you know, that's probably alright, and you just move on with your day. But sometimes you'll hear a couple of voices or you'll see an article, just someone talking about that show that you skimmed over. For me, it just so happened to be West Gate Park, so I heard that it was actually supposedly pretty good. It's a shorter manga series, 36 or 39 chapters of completed manga. Apparently the story's really interesting. Looked over the description one more time and I was like, oh, that's actually a little more intriguing than I initially thought. Checked out the preview, immediately gave me some Durarara vibes if anyone ever seen that great anime. It's wild, it's wacky, it's fun. And while I didn't think it was going to go Dillon level crazy, as that series kind of is in a league of its own for insanity, it did have a charm and style with whole gang wars, turf wars, you know, trying to fight for something, things being taken away from you, but also having that more kind of comfy side to it. It just felt like we were going to get something that was going to be fresh and exciting, and Dogakoba is generally very good at taking things that usually wouldn't get adapted and bringing them to life in a very elegant and unique way. And while people may want to say, why should I watch this when there's so many good big anime that everyone's going to be discussing and hyping up and I don't have time, why should I make time for something like this? And I think it comes down to two very interesting aspects. The first of which is the maturity of the setting. The idea of gang wars, turf wars, people kind of breaking the law but also working alongside the law as you have these kind of like bad boys, whatever they're calling themselves, and they pretty much are a gang. They all wear the same colors, and the thing with them is they're not the gang in the traditional sense where they're selling drugs and trying to hurt people for a profit. Rather, they're hunting down those who hurt others in their turf, and while the cops don't publicly work with them, in the shadows they give them intel to help basically help the case along, because, well, unfortunately for them, if they only play by the rules, a lot of these people are gonna get away scot-free. As you see in this first episode, it's basically all about drugs and how this drugs is really messing with people's minds to the point that children are being left without parents because they're hospitalized because a junkie ran her over when he was on a high, right? So there's all these things. So what they ended up doing is they framed drugs that they found at a different location that they would never be able to track down in their name, and if they even could, they would have got notice before the cops got there and they would have cleared out their stash. But by planting it in a very open and looks to be just a normal shop, nothing that's overly wrong, it then leads a trace, and while it may be technically illegal, it's the way you get the job done when you're trying to go against kind of drug kingpins and something like that. So I like the idea of the maturity to the show where it's not overly serious to the point that it's dry and boring. We're not watching Law & Order here. We're not watching something that's just, you're like, okay, there's no humility here. There's no time to be fun. Like, the reason I thought this could be like a Durarara style show was the preview made it seem bouncy and fun, and while it's not as energetic as I thought the first episode was going to be, there was enough energy there that with characters like Magato and the king of this organization, there's some great banter, there's some funny moments in this series, and even when you bring in a child who I thought was going to be an arrogant, annoying brat, as she's just like, oh, what's she do? Is this like the niece of the junkie that we arrested? Like, what's going on? And while she definitely had a lot of moments of just being super sad and gloomy, kind of makes sense due to the fact that her mother's in the hospital and she has no parents right now, or dad's nowhere to be seen, right? So even though I thought this was going to either be a very dry or just annoying character, she actually had some fun interactions, and by the end of this episode, she looks at Magato not as like, oh, I'm gonna marry you someday. She's like, hey, I would love to have a dad like you someday. And I'm like, what a fun twist on what you thought was gonna happen, where she would just be that young girl who's like, I'm gonna marry you someday. And he's like, yeah, whatever you say, kid. Or it's like, oh, you're my big brother. No, she just goes like, I never had a dad. You're pretty cool. I want you as a dad. And you're looking at this guy, you're like, I mean, he seems like, if anything, maybe older brother, not father figure, but goddamn, do you love this show? It just feels like because of the age of the main characters, it's very easy to not look at this and shrug it off as yet again another high school anime, and it gives us this more mature feel where anything can happen, good and bad. And if you read the synopsis to the show, it says that Magato is going to lose someone close to him, and what is he going to do? And this episode is all about not showing your identity and being able to take care of this drug business, because if they find out who you are, they have powerful people backing them, and seemingly by the end of the episode, those powerful people know his identity. Is it going to be his mother that ends up getting killed? Will it be the king, who's one of the main characters listed in this show? It's hard to say, but it's clear that this first episode may not have been the wildest and wackiest and most insane death-filled episode of the season. It's something that is going to propel and spiral this series out of control now that we're going to probably have gang turf wars, and it's probably going to get bloody and pretty brutal quite fast. Even if it's not just slashing and dicing nonstop, it's one of those things where the people you love you have to keep a very close eye on, because now that they know your face, they'll go after them rather than going after you. It's a very mature setting, and while it does have a more comfy feel to it in the general scenes, I mean, it's not constantly you're sweating bullets. It does have that uncertainty which kind of mirrors real life, where a lot of these people, they blend in with day-to-day society. You wouldn't think of them as a high-quality drug kingpin or something like that. They really are just trying to do their thing, and even if characters like Makoto, who are going against the law, he's doing things for right reasons, and now that he's roped up into such a situation, is his mother going to die? Is that little girl going to die? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty with it, and I love the maturity to the setting, and it really sets itself apart for the fall season. While it may not appear to be at first glance, it's definitely one of the more mature shows that has fun to it, but it also has a more serious and unique premise that you really don't get to see. And I think if they continue to really flesh out this story, we have one of the more unique stories in the fall season, and I'd probably go as far to say this will be the underdog of the season if I'm going to make any sort of prediction. It's something that maybe people won't look at first, but as the weeks progress, and probably around episode 9, episode 10, people will finally start giving it a shot and be like, why wasn't I watching this weekly? The second thing, as I mentioned, as there's two big aspects that draws me in, is the visual presentation. Anime has a general style that when you look at it, it screams anime. It's modern 2000s anime, right? We're in the year 2020 now. We know what anime is generally going to look like. And it's hard for me to put into words exactly what I feel when looking at these characters, but it almost feels like a human with an anime filter put on them, but done very, very well. It has this realistic feel, but it has this fuzziness. It has this way of blending in with its environment, and it just sucks you in such a unique and vibrant way that you feel this is anime in 2020, but it also is clearly West Gate Park. It's not copying styles that came before. It's kind of reinventing the wheel in a certain sense. Not super crazy that it's going to be like, oh, we've never seen anything like this, but we don't see enough in this type of style with this almost just, it has this fuzzy appeal, but it's done so in such high quality elegance that it's just so interesting to look at. And I'm really happy that they didn't go overly poppy and colorful and, just the typical character designs that we're used to. They look like adults, they feel like adults, they sound like adults. It feels like a realistic setting in the best way you can probably do so for anime, since it is 2D hand-drawn. Hell, even the cars when they were driving were all hand-drawn as far as I can tell, which usually you see those as 3D models. And just everything about it, even though it's not the flashiest in the traditional sense, it definitely is flashy in West Gate Park sense. It's something that didn't feel like it visually dipped, it was consistent, and while there wasn't a lot of animation, the running, just the kicks and things like that, it did feel really solid. And I mean, there's moments where just the whole gang kind of appears. You think it's a general crowd and this junkie gets surrounded by gang members all wearing the same color. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy wasn't shitting his pants. He definitely is so right now. This is a show that I don't think is going to be the most popular show of the season. But like I said, I think closer towards its end is going to garnish a lot of popularity if the first episode is a good indicator of what's to come, which I definitely think it will be based on some of the people who've clearly experienced the source material really hyping this one up. I really enjoyed my time. I really hope more people give this one a shot because it is really fun. Who knows, maybe this will be one of the most popular and I'm going to be like, oh, I thought this was going to be an underdog, and people loved it from the get-go. Nonetheless, this was great. I want more and definitely will be reviewing this in the coming episodes. Let me know your thoughts and feelings though down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? And where do you think it might go? And who is your prediction on who could be on the chopping block for Makoto's kind of noble deed that is going to bite him in the ass? Of course, no spoilers, please and thank you. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like to show your support and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.